first up, let's talk about your let's talk about the breakfast you have tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, who's going to be there, and what are you guys going to talk about at this breakfast, virtual breakfast?
Right. We're going to have several developers at our virtual breakfast. This is our first one. Normally we meet at the Tower Club downtown Fort Lauderdale. We have about 100 individuals registered, our first fee-for-service virtual breakfast. And we'll be talking about how development's going to recover after COVID-19, what it's going to look like coming out of COVID-19.
Gotcha. Right now, just a lot of businesses are trying to figure out the fate of their future. How bad is this situation for businesses in the greater Fort Lauderdale area right now with COVID-19?
Yeah, it's as bad as it gets. I mean, this is worse than really any of the hurricanes that I've been through. Not as far as damage, physical damage, but the economic damage that it's caused with the number of people that have been laid off, the number of businesses that have really just dried up revenues, whether it's in the hospitality industry, at our airport, across the lines, we've seen really, really difficult revenue streams evaporating, sales tax revenues, tourism tax revenues. So it's been a real challenge.
Yeah. Do you think many businesses will be able to rebound from this if this continues much longer?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist, but we're going to see some businesses shutter and not come out of this, not be able to survive. There's no doubt. There's a lot of discussion on merger and acquisition and smaller businesses, consolidation, even in chamber organizations like my own. The stimulus package, the next phase, is probably going to be approved this week, tomorrow, Thursday. The president will sign that. We'll get more funding coming out. But again, that's not going to be enough. We can't pay our way out of this thing. We can just mitigate it as best as possible.
Speaking of the stimulus package, were some of the small businesses in the Fort Lauderdale area having the same problems as many other small businesses around the country in terms of being able to get some of that money, and what was the outcome with that overall for many businesses in the area?
From the business owners I've talked to, it was a frustrating process, to say the least. They just didn't have the expertise in these loan processes, the relationships maybe with a financial institution. So if they didn't have all this set up at the front end, expertise and relationships, they were the odd man out. They didn't even get qualified. Some are still waiting to see. If they've been waiting to see at this point, chances are they weren't funded, but they could be on the front of the line for this next round.
So you think if Congress votes and the president signs off this bill, they'll have better chances of seeing that sort of round two of the paycheck protection?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. Even my church, All Saints Episcopal Church, we applied for funding as a 501c3. And so that we're in the queue now. So we'll see if this next round proves to be fruitful.
Yeah. What are businesses doing right now in terms of trying to stay afloat? I know it's hard to speak for everybody, and everybody has sort of different circumstances and different financial plans and different operations. Some businesses are doing okay, despite the general economy. But overall, how are businesses staying afloat? I guess creativity would be the name of the game.
It's all about innovation. So from the pivoting of our restaurants to do carryout, it's not a sustainable business model to do carryout and takeout, but at least that they're keeping some people employed. So they're right now we're working on what it looks like when we go back to work. So for example, this afternoon, we have our first meeting with the mayor of the city of Fort Lauderdale on restarting our economy. The governor's got his task force that he's put together. What does it look like? How are we going to re-engage? What are going to be the rules of engagement? And how can we make that consistent throughout all our 31 cities in Broward County and through all our counties throughout the state of Florida? That's a really important part of the process.
there is the concern if the economy or restrictions are lifted too early that we could, go backwards and see a spike in COVID-19 cases. Is there that concern for you and businesses as well, or would you like to see businesses open sooner than later?
Well, I was a outspoken proponent of really self-distancing and closing businesses so that we could contain and mitigate the spread. Early on, in early March, I said this has to happen, much to the chagrin of some of my investors. So I'm thinking that, coming back, we just have to be as driven by science and the medical industry as we can, but we can't let that govern everything. So there's got to be a balance, because there's an economic cliff that some of these small business owners are facing right now. Some have already gone off that edge and will never restart again. So we can't let it go on too much longer, because if it does, we're never going to be able to recover as small businesses.
And just for those that don't understand, the ties of small business and the economy, if there was that cliff that folks go over, how detrimental can that be to the overall community?
Well, small business drives our economy. It's the number one employer in South Florida, the 12th largest economy in the United States. If we were a state, we'd be the 12th largest state just by our gross domestic product that we generate in the Tri-County area. So if we start losing small businesses and they can't recover, those are the folks that grow business, that create new jobs, and that's going to be absolutely detrimental for us. It'll take us so much longer to recover.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending your time with me this morning and sharing a little bit of knowledge about what's going on in the Fort Lauderdale area. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.